Step into the world of power, loyalty, and luck.
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
With family, cannolis, and spins mean everything.
Now, you wanna get mixed up in the family business.
Introducing The Godfather at ChumbaCasino.com. Test your luck in the shadowy world of The Godfather slot.
Someday, I will call upon you to do a service for me.
Play The Godfather, now at ChumbaCasino.com.
Welcome to the family.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Hello and welcome to the Paddock and the Pavilion, possibly the only podcast which focuses on horse racing and cricket. Today the focus is cricket and the 4th 100 tournament, which is due to start on Tuesday the 23rd of July. Joining me to discuss the past, present and future of the 100 is Rosa Simkin, our principal guest of Rosa Talks Ball, along with Kirstie Gordon and Mick Newell, both from the Trent Rockets. Rosa previews the women's competition, giving us her top run scorer, top wicket taker and her trophy winners. While like Rosa, Kirstie and Mick reflect on the first 3 years of the new competition. Mick, now the general manager at the Trent Rockets, also adds his thoughts on the future of the 100. Hello, Rosa. Welcome back to the Paddock and the Pavilion, and welcome back from your holiday.
Thank you very much for having me back on. It's great to be here.
Yes, last time was episode 264, when you were on fire about women's cricket. Where have you been on holiday first?
Portugal for the week, which was lovely, very much needed. Nice rest and relaxation ahead of a busy cricketing few weeks with the 100.
Yes, and you were doing some, I hope, studying about the 100, which we're going to find out in this podcast.
I was indeed. I've been writing my previews for each squad, which has been interesting, but very knowledgeable ahead of this podcast.
Well, that's good. Hopefully we're going to find out how much you know about the 100, where every ball counts, as we were saying off air.
Does indeed. With 20 less balls than your typical T20 game, you definitely are under the expectation to get going much, much quicker.
The action starts on Tuesday the 23rd of July with the Oval Invincibles playing the Birmingham Phoenix. That's right, isn't it? Your home team.
Yeah, my local team definitely didn't have the year that they would have hoped last year. So hopefully this year can be one of many improvements for both the men and women.
Let's get started. And in this episode, we're going to hear from two other guests. We're going to hear from Mick Newell, the general manager of the Trent Rockets. He's a former Nottinghamshire coach and player. And we're also going to hear from Kirstie Gordon from the Trent Rockets. To start with, I wanted to ask you, we've been going now for 3 years. What do you like about the 100?
It's fast, it's energetic, it's exciting. I think when you look at core aims of the ECB when they created the 100, with the main one being to grow and diversify the audience profile of the game through the 100, they've definitely achieved that. It's so refreshing to see crowds full of families, full of young girls, young boys, people of all genders. It's just incredible. I think 2022 was probably my favourite year for the tournament. I think 2021 was a tad confusing for the players and the fans alike with a brand new top format. And last year we definitely struggled a bit with the good old British summer and a lot of rain. But I'm super excited to see what comes of it this year.
Yeah, the weather did hit. Well, it hit the London Spirit. They didn't get started, I think, until about their third game, did they? Because of the weather.
Yeah, and it's a problem when it comes to franchise tournaments because you can get away with it slightly more in a domestic competition because you're playing more games. But when you've literally only got 7 or 8 games in a season, if you have 3 of them rained off, you have no hope of getting to the final. So it definitely did change the dynamic of the tournament for all those involved in it.
We've had such a bad summer so far. Surely we must get some decent weather between the 23rd of July and the 18th of August.
I mean, you'd like to think so. We've had a lot of rain. I'm hoping that this lovely hot summer is going to come before September this year, but we'll see.
It was certainly hot enough on Wednesday when I went to Lord's for the England versus New Zealand women's T20 match and the Test match yesterday at Trent Bridge. So let's keep our fingers crossed for the 100. Has it been even better than you thought, the 3 years?
Oh, I think yes. I think it was a controversial one, the 100, let's be real. Especially from the men's side of things, no one really knew how it was going to work with a completely new format, which the ECB created from scratch, pretty much. Even things like changing the length of the overs to enable 100 balls. But I think it's been very successful. The attendances have been great. The TV viewing figures have been very, very, very good. It helps that some of the games are shown on the BBC, so they're more accessible to more people, which is really important and something which I would like to see more so in the game as a whole. But I don't know what more the ECB could have wanted after these first few years.
Right, let's hear from our first guest. I've spoken to Kirstie Gordon, who plays for the Trent Rockets. She did play for the Birmingham Phoenix. She's my guest actually on my next podcast when I've been speaking to her about her career and looking ahead to the 100. These are Kirstie's reflections on the first 3 years of the 100.
Yeah, it's been unbelievable, really. Everything that they set out to do in terms of attracting new audiences, pushing women's cricket forward and into the limelight. I think they've ticked those boxes incredibly well. I remember the first game I played in the 100 was for Birmingham Phoenix against London Spirit. Ran out on the pitch at Edgbaston. I was fielding at backward point, and Amy Jones was the captain keeper, so she's behind the stumps. So we're literally 20 odd yards away from each other, and she's shouting at me, and I could not hear what she was saying. And I was like, whoa, this is real. Like, this is, all these people are in here, like, watching us. We had over 10,000 that day for the first game. And I think that was really when the world opened their eyes, or the country, I suppose, opened their eyes to it. And ever since then, as we know, every game's had phenomenal crowds, and long may it continue, because it's great to see women's cricket being put on the forefront of the agenda.
Great to hear from Kirstie there. It's been a real boost to the women's game.
Yeah, I mean, it's been massive. When I think about the transformation the women's game has faced in England over the past few years, catalyst by the 100, it's phenomenal. I mean, Kirstie was saying there about first game at Edgbaston, she couldn't hear what Amy Jones was saying to her because the crowd was so loud, and that's just so different from anything women's cricketers have experienced before. We've had success in terms of internationals before that point, especially looking at the 2017 World Cup final at Lord's. Anya Shrubsole's iconic 6-wicket haul leading England to the World Cup. There was a great attendance that day, but it was still a rarity. And I think it's genuinely opened the eyes of the nation to women's cricket. I think the Lionesses Euros win was quite significant into helping that. I think them opening the eyes of the nation to women's sport as a whole has definitely benefited the cricket side of things. But when you think about the ECB's core aims when they headed into this tournament, one of them being creating a great platform for women's cricket, they have certainly done that. It's the first time we've ever had in this country a fully professional women's squad, which isn't England. That is significant, to have 15 players in a professional environment playing at 8 of the best grounds in the country, being paid for everything they do, being shown on TV, being advertised on an equal playing field to their male counterparts. It's been massive, and it has genuinely revolutionised the game, and that's one of the reasons why I love the 100 so much.
Personally, I like the fact there's 2 matches as well. It adds to the whole occasion. It was obviously at one point before COVID going to be staging 2 separate on two separate days, with the men's matches being completely separate to the women's matches. It certainly adds to the occasion when you're going there to see two matches.
Yeah, completely. I think that's one of the only ways that COVID has been a blessing in disguise. We can fixate on the past. To be honest, there's a lot of promises which the ECB have made regarding the 100 which haven't happened as well. But it has worked, double headers, and they have realised they've righted their wrongs, they've stuck with them. And advertising games as it's one ticket, it's two matches, It's a great way of getting people in for both games.
Next up is our second guest. Mick Newell is, as I said, the former coach and a former player at Nottinghamshire. He's now the general manager at the Trent Rockets. And I asked Mick for his reflections of the 100 over the past 3 years. And this is what Mick had to say. First question about the 100. Is the 100 good for cricket and English cricket?
Yeah, I'll give you a one-word answer if you like. Yes, it is.
How do you react then to the criticism that you get from county members, perhaps not at Notts, I don't know, and around the country?
Well, look, it's not for everybody. It's probably not for a number of people who like to watch their 4-day cricket or their 50-over cricket or their test cricket. So, if it was appealing to that audience, then it probably wasn't doing what it's meant to be doing. And what it's meant to be doing is introducing people to cricket who don't come to any other form of the game. Hopefully they will in the future. They're getting behind their local city team or their local big ground team and supporting the game and seeing world-class cricketers playing, a high standard, hopefully in front of full houses on warm summer nights and introducing people to this great game, which has a variety of formats for everybody.
What do you think to the impact on the cricketing calendar? We're trying to fit in so much in a relatively short period of time.
Yeah, we are. I think there's, we tried to have a debate about this a couple of years ago and it got shut down very quickly. And I think there's that we need to have a further debate about it. There's been a lot of complaints from players in particular this year about the amount of cricket that they're playing and the travel in between games and the sort of rush to play 2 or 3 or even on some occasions 4 back-to-back T20s over the course of the weekend. So, look, I think the domestic structure debate will go on. I think we do, in my opinion, should play a little bit less cricket, but not huge amounts. And it is quite crowded, and it's 18 teams and a lot of cricket. So I understand the debates, but I think a lot of that cricket is played in front of very low crowds, if any crowds. And I think we need to have a product that people will watch and pay to watch and pay to support. And I think the 100 is an important part of that sort of aspect of the game.
And from what you're saying, the reaction from the local public in Nottingham and around that area has been positive to the 100?
It's positive in terms of people coming to watch and the amount of kit that we sell. For a team that's existed for 3 years, we sell a lot more Trent Rockets hats, caps, shirts, sweaters, hoodies than we sell Notts. And Notts has been around for 200 years. So I think there's an attraction of the 100 to people to come and watch, on, as I say, in the school holidays and that sort of thing. And it's here to stay. It's here to stay for the foreseeable future. So I don't see much point in sniping and carping about it. I think we need to accept that it's here, that the benefits, the financial benefits that it brings will benefit the game and will allow those people who don't want to watch the 100 to continue to watch the formats of the game that they do want to watch.
And there are financial benefits, but you hear some people say that there isn't. But
well, look, the biggest financial beneficiary to the county game and to the domestic game is Sky, and Sky love the 100. So to me, that's not a difficult relationship. Then you don't want to, in my opinion, upset Sky, because I don't think county cricket can survive without the TV income. And the 100 fits what Sky want perfectly. A game a day, a story that people can follow over 25, 28 days. It's a simple story for people to watch and enjoy. So I think if Sky like it, then we all need to like it, if I'm honest. We'd be burying our heads in the sand if we thought that county cricket could survive without the input of cash that this major TV provider is giving to the game.
And with your association with the Blaze, that must have been a boost to women's cricket, having the 100 at Trent Bridge. Yeah,
I mean, women's game's grown enormously in the last few years, as you know, and to have a regional setup beneath the 100 or, supporting the 100 is absolutely crucial. So we have a full-time women's team here now, one of 8. that train and play and gym and net and everything here at Trent Bridge or at our training ground at Lady Bay down the road. So there's definitely a huge growth in that. And as you say, with the 100, what you've seen is because of COVID in 2020, we've now, every game's been a double header, which actually works perfectly, I think, for the day's worth of entertainment for families to come along and watch. So, it was by accident, but I think now it's here as a double header format. It's not going away.
Yeah, I came to a single header because of the Commonwealth Games, and it didn't seem the same just having one match on a day.
Yeah, I think now we've got used to this routine of having two games, a 3 o'clock and a 7 o'clock or whatever it is. And I think a lot more people, certainly over the last year, are coming early, coming for the first game as well as the second game. I think initially there was perhaps more support for the men's game and people weren't coming for the girls and they'd come in the break. Whereas now we're definitely seeing, you've only got to watch women's football to see it's a different audience as well. It's great to see young girls with their parents or grandparents watching professional sport on major test match grounds, major football grounds, and having role model players like Nat Brunt or Alana King in our case, or Danny Wyatt at Southern Brave, and the girls aspiring to be them rather than thinking that their favourite player was Joe Root or Ben Stokes, who they can never be.
Mick, who was also an England selector, reinforcing quite a few of the things that we said earlier.
Yeah, for sure. I think a lot of the stuff about the community engagement, which he mentioned, is massive. I think if we are able to create role models for everyone, and that is something the 100 does massively. I see young girls all the times with Perry on the back of their shirt for Elise Perry or Amy Jones at Birmingham Phoenix games, and especially with the player engagement after the games, the players are very happy to interact with young fans. It's so crucial if we want to diversify the game. And that's become even more crucial in the last year with the ICEC report coming in. And I think it's something the ECB have to continue to capitalise when it comes to the 100, because it's one of the reasons which makes the tournament so incredible.
Very positive thoughts there from Mick.
100%. I think not everyone is always going to like something. I think that's an expectation in cricket, which has always failed. When the Vitality Blast first came into existence, there was so much criticism about T20 as a format. And look where we are with it now. Cricket is so diverse in terms of the way it's played. It's exciting at times and it's quite dull at other times, but people like different formats. People who like your traditional county championship or test match probably don't particularly like T20 cricket. And if they don't like T20 cricket, then they're not going to like the 100. But the 100 is not for them. The 100 is for introducing people into the game. The 100 is for giving young girls and boys role models. It's important that we have an environment in which we allow all formats to thrive along each other. And as he said, the financial benefits of the 100 are going to benefit the counties, to enable the county championship and the One Day Cup to continue to develop and continue to exist, which currently they can't really be financially dependent by themselves because the attendance isn't there. So it's crucial, and we should, as a cricketing society, accept it more than we do.
What was interesting, I thought, was when he was mentioning about the amount of shirts that people are buying, because having been to the test match yesterday, it was noticeable that you were seeing young boys and girls who were wearing Southern Brave, Oval Invincibles, London Spirit, Trent Rockets shirts and caps at the test match.
Sure, but it's what is in front of them. It's what, they are more commonly now seeing in the cricketing circuit, and it's exciting for kids because when I was younger, I didn't want to sit and watch Test cricket for 5 days or sit and watch the county championship for 4 days because it wasn't exciting. Whereas when you go to the 100, you've got people smashing the ball for 6 and 4. You've got exciting fireworks and music and all sorts. It's bright, it's colourful. It's always going to appeal to kids. And I'm not saying that's something which the county game can't do, but it's something which the 100 does exceptionally well, which is why we should continue to capitalise on it.
Let's get going with our previews of the 8 women's teams in the 100. I feel like we should have a countdown 10-1, but I'm not going to do that. So let's start with your home team, the Birmingham Phoenix. Last season, they didn't do too well, did they?
Yeah, last season was an interesting one. They placed eighth. They played 7 of the 8 games they were scheduled to due to rain, and they didn't win any of them. It just didn't click. The team was thrown together. It wasn't balanced. There were enough spinners to create a whole 11 of spinners, pretty much, which in a franchise tournament probably is not what you want. There weren't enough all-rounders. There was a very long tail with the bat. And because the top of their order wasn't doing as well as they stereotypically would do, they were suffering because the bottom end of their order couldn't score runs quickly. And in the 100, you have to score runs quickly. I think Elise Perry was a massive loss last year. She missed out due to injury. She's coming into the side again this year. She's replacing Eve Jones as captain. Eve Jones is no longer at Phoenix. It's her first year in the 100 where she won't be at Phoenix. She's moved down the way to Manchester Originals. So it's a new environment. The coach is the same, Ben Sawyer, which I think is a massively interesting one. He historically has not done well as a coach. New Zealand women, who he also coaches, have won less than 50% of their games with him as their leader. RCB women in their debut tournament of the IPL only won a couple of games and placed last. So I think it was an interesting and brave decision by the 100 to keep him on. I know he signed a 2-year contract, so it can get a bit complicated, but we'll see how that goes. I don't think they're not going to win any games again. I think that's very unlikely for a team to do that 2 years in a row. They drafted reasonably well. They've brought in some all-rounders. They've brought in some young talent. The wicketkeeper batting situation in the draft was quite incredible. They had, due to placing 8th last year, they got the first pick in this year's draft. And they used it to retain Amy Jones, which they could have done when they were retaining players, as an example. Then they signed Risha Ghosh. Then they signed Seren Smale. And then they signed Lister, another wicketkeeper batter, who has now pulled out. So the drafting, again, is a tad baffling, but they've got a very poor batting unit this year of Sophie Devine, Amy Jones, Risha Ghosh, Susie Bates when Risha Ghosh is playing at the Asia Cup, and Elise Perry. So I think they're much more set this year. It will be very interesting to see how they go.
So hopefully you might see the odd win at Edgbaston.
You'd like to think so. The men also struggled last year, so it was a bad year from a Phoenix perspective, but the fans kept showing up, which is always positive. But it's very important that both teams start getting some wins on the board, and early as well, because the thing with franchise cricket is it's all about the momentum. If you start well, you're probably going to continue to do well. But let's hope the weather doesn't let them down in that sense.
Next up then, the London Spirit. Now they've got the former Australian captain Meg Lanning, a real superstar, playing for them in 2024.
They have indeed. Meg is a legend of the women's game. She is probably the greatest player to ever grace it. The way in which she led Australia for all of those years to so many World Cups and Commonwealth Games and all of these different competitions that it was rather frustrating if you weren't Australian was quite incredible, and she is a huge boost for them. It's also incredible to be able to attract such big names. I think they have, however, lost Grace Harris, who was crucial for them last year. Deepti Sharma coming in to replace her, and then Erin Burns replacing Deepti Sharma whilst Deepti Sharma is on international duty. But they've got a great overseas player unit. They're very balanced. They've got a lot of all-rounders. You've got your Danny Gibsons, your Charlie Deans, your Sarah Glenn, who can hit a few. They've got good bowlers. They've got good young talent. Ellie Anderson is an example. And then some core regional talent in your Hannah Jones and your Abby Freeborn. Captained by Heather Knight. So she's got a lot of experience. They placed 6th last year. And we'll see this year, but I reckon it could be more positive.
Sounds good then for the London Spirit. Moving on now to the Manchester Originals. They last year came 7th with only 2 wins.
They did. They struggled last year, but it's quite important to point out that if I remember correctly, they missed quite a few games due to rain. They had 2 no results. So they were one of two teams to be really hit the weather, London Spirit being the other. So I think they struggled to get their momentum going. I think that was their first 2 games, if I remember correctly. So immediately you're on the back foot. They then, halfway through the tournament, lost their captain, Sophie Eccleston, due to injury. So there was a lot going wrong for them. I think they made some very poor selection decisions last year. As an example, I remember going to their game at Trent Bridge and them collapsing with the bat. And they had Amy Campbell in the 11, who is a number 3 or 4 batter, and she didn't bat in the game. She wasn't injured, despite the fact that they lost nearly all their wickets. I think they've gained Eve Jones from Phoenix. I think she's going to be crucial for them. They have, however, lost 2 very key players over the last few days. Mahika Gore has pulled out due to injury, and Sophie Molyneux has also pulled out due to injury. And those are 2 players who, for their plans and the way they play their cricket, are crucial. And don't get me wrong, they've still got Beth Mooney, Laura Wolvart, Lauren Filer. It's an incredible lineup. But there's something about Mahika Gore and Sophie Molyneux. And the players coming in to replace them in Bethan Ellis and Kim Garth are very talented, but they're very different players. So it'll be interesting to see how they fare with quite a curveball thrown at them just before the tournament begins.
They have got Scottish international Catherine Bryce, who had a very good Charlotte Edwards Cup.
They have indeed. I can't believe I've missed her. She was on fire during the Charlotte Edwards Cup. 50 after 50. It was incredible to see, after leading her side to their first World Cup.
That's right, yeah. They're going to play England.
They are going to play England. They're in the same group as us, which will be very interesting. But Catherine Bryce is the woman of the moment in women's regional cricket. She can bat, she can bowl. She is your prime all-rounder. She's a great leadership figure for Sophie Eccleston to have on her side as well. Given Sophie Eccleston herself is getting her head around the captaining side of things, especially given her time was cut short last year. But Catherine Bryce is probably on to have an incredible tournament like she did in the Charlotte Edwards Cup.
Our next team to focus on, keeping on the fire theme, is the Trent Rockets, led by Nat Sibber-Brunt. And before we hear your thoughts on the Trent Rockets, let's hear what Kirstie Gordon had to say when I spoke to her earlier this week. So far, you've been 3rd. You lost in the eliminator with the Birmingham Phoenix, 4th and 4th again last year with the Trent Rockets. How do you think you'll go this year?
Hopefully better than those last 3 results. But I think that's the beauty of the 100 is I honestly can't predict it. And anyone could beat anyone. And I think a big thing in the 100 is, I guess, how your best players go. Like, you probably need at least 1, if not 2, of your overseas players to really fire. They're some of the best players in the world. So, excuse me, you're probably looking at them to have at least 1 to have an exceptional tournament, and then the rest of us to kind of chip in around that. And if you can have a handful of domestic players winning you the odd game here and there, that's probably what makes a good team. If you kind of look at the past winners, that's generally how the trend goes, I guess, in the women's game. So yeah, hopefully we go better, but it's just so hard to predict, and that's the beauty of it as well.
We saw that last year with the Welsh Fire. I mean, the draft obviously changed their team, but they went from being a team right at the bottom to a team that could have won the tournament. Yeah,
exactly that. They were exceptional, and Hayley Matthews was a massive part of that. She had an outstanding tournament, especially with the bat, but as an all-rounder really, and Tammy as well played well. We were on the back receiving end of her 100 in the 100, so that wasn't obviously a fun day for us, but obviously pleasing for a teammate to see her go on and do so well.
You've mentioned her before, Nat Sibber-Brunt. You've also got Ash Gardner and Alana King playing for you.
Yeah, I had Kingy last year at the Rockets, who got on really well with her, and someone with like loads of experience. So in terms of a spinner, like, it's somebody that I can bounce off ideas with and keep learning off. And yeah, in Ash, we've got one of the best all-rounders in the world. Probably in our team, we've got the 2 best all-rounders in the world. in my opinion, in Nat and in Ash. So yeah, again, I feel like her as a spinner has kind of taken her game to the next level in the last kind of couple of years. So no, it's exciting again to have new people around and learn off them as well.
So what did you think to Kirstie? We spoke off air and you've spoken to Kirstie yourself before.
I mean, first of all, talented player in her own right. You know, she was crucial to the Blaze in their recent Charlotte Edwards Cup victory. And I completely agree with her. I think they're a team which has a lot of potential. They've done well in the drafts to bring good players in. I think Ash Gardner is very exciting. We saw in the Ashes last year what she can do in England. Took a 10-wicket haul in that test match and was a bit of a bane of our existence in that whole series, to be honest, with her bowling and batting. So to have her here for her first edition of the 100 is kind of testament to the success of the 100 in recent years. For players like her and Meg Lanning at London Spirit to think that, oh, maybe I should give this a go. Nat Silverbrunt as well. I agree that those two are probably some of the best all-rounders in the world right now. Hayley Matthews is probably also quite up there, who Kirstie also mentioned. I think they've got the really young, exciting Grace Scrivens, probably future England captain. They've got the other overseas talent of Alana King, as Kirstie mentioned, very talented spinner. She took a hat-trick a couple of years ago. And then one of my favourite players, and I might be a bit biased because she plays for my local team, but Katie George, left arm pace bowler, probably one of the quickest in the country at the moment. She is rapid. She suffered a stretch fracture, 2 stretch fractures in a row actually, a few years ago. So she spent quite a long time out of the game. But yet she came to the 100 in 2022 just to be a specialist fielder, which I think is testament to her as a player. She can bat, she can bowl, she can field. They have the potential to do very well. It's just they need all of their players to gel, which I think has been one of their biggest problems in recent years, and probably is quite a big problem for a lot of teams in franchise cricket. But hopefully with the same leadership and that Silverbrunt and the same head coach and John Lewis, not the England head coach, different John Lewis, they can do very well.
Must get that right, the John Lewis. One player who did well last year and has been a previous guest on the Paddock and the Pavilion is their opening batsman, Bryony Smith, who was one of the leading run scorers last year and also had the highest strike rate of someone who scored lots of runs.
Bryony Smith is an explosive cricketer. She is probably one of the biggest hitters in the women's game. One of the things the women's game as a whole probably lacks is the six hitting. And some of that is strength, but a lot of that is because women's cricketers tend to be taught, because they lack strength in comparison to the men, to be more technical. And we see that in Nat Silverbrunt as an example. But Bryony Smith is a huge talent. She had a brief spell with England in 2022. I think she will probably be up there again in the future. She is one of those players who can score runs. It's just whether she can get motoring when you need her to.
We're halfway through, Rosa. We've got to talk about the fire. You're always talking about the Welsh fire, and Kirstie also mentioned the Welsh fire. We had hat-tricks last year from Shabnim Ismail. Tammy Beaumont scored a century, and they had other leading run scorers in Sophia Dunkley. What's your thoughts on the fire?
I was absolutely fuming last year. I came on this podcast before the tournament and I said they're going to go all the way and win it. And I know some people thought I was absolutely nuts for that prediction after they spent 2 years right at the bottom of the table. What did they do? They make it to the eliminator. Then what happened? It rained and they were eliminated.
They got 5 wins last year out of 8 matches.
They did, and they played some incredible cricket. I mean, that Ishmael hat-trick against Birmingham Phoenix at Edgbaston, I was there. Birmingham Phoenix had that game done. It was done and dusted. They needed a few more runs off the last over, then bam, 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 she sorted it. They are probably the most stacked squad in the tournament. In terms of their overseas talent, they've got Hayley Matthews, who Kirstie mentioned, an incredible all-rounder, West Indies captain. She probably will be used more so for her batting by Captain Tammy Beaumont, but we'll see. We've got Shabnam Ismail, the fastest bowler in women's cricket of all time, South African legend. She's proven at Oval Invincibles previously and now at Wildfire what she can do. And you've got Jess Jonathan, in my opinion, one of the best spinners in the women's game. Aussie player, just phenomenal. Every single player in their team is strong. They've not got a single weak link. All of them can field, all of them can bat to a certain extent. They've got a lot of bowlers, they've got a lot of all-rounders. Georgia Davis of the Central Sparks coming in. She last year was the top wicket taker in the 50 over tournament, but missed out on a 100 contract, so she has a point to prove. We will see what happens, but I see them doing well again this year.
I felt that with what you just said, that you're certainly still on fire for the Welsh Fire. Third last year, but as you say, denied the chance of getting to the final. Let's move on to someone who got to the final last year, a team, the Northern Superchargers. They won 6 matches last year, came second, and then lost the final to the Southern Brave. They look strong.
They do. Another Aussie contingent for their overseas players in Annabelle Sutherland, Phoebe Litchfield and Georgia Wareham. Sutherland and Litchfield were some of the most expensive players in the IPL draft recently. Georgia Wareham is an incredibly talented spinner who people may remember she absolutely hit Lauren Ball around the park in a couple of England games in the Ashes last summer. She can bat. They had such a good season last year. They were very underwhelming, in that final. And I think some of that was probably the experience of the players within that side in those major games. But they have so much potential to do well. There's quite a large Blaze contingent at Superchargers, as Chris Guest, their head coach, has quite a significant role there. I mean, they've got Grace Ballinger, Marie Kelly, Lucy Hyam, and Ella Claridge, 4 extremely talented players. Davina Perrin has joined them from Birmingham Phoenix, a player who has been exceptional this year and has proven time and time again, even though she's only 17, she's been playing regional cricket at the highest level for 4 years now. She has been unlucky not to get game time by Phoenix, and I think if she is given the right opportunities by Danny Hazel and Holly Armitage, she could be one of their key players. And Phoenix will probably be looking on and thinking, what have we lost?
Thank you for listening to The Paddock and the Pavilion with me, Stephen Wallace. In our next show coming later this week, Kirstie Gordon, the captain of the Blaze, joins me to chat about her career, which has taken her from Aberdeen to the England Test side, and for the next few weeks, to the Trent Rockets. All of our shows can be found on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify and YouTube. Why not take a listen and subscribe to the show? Now let's get back to Rosa as she previews the 2 remaining sides, starting with the Oval Invincibles. We're down to 2 teams now, and just by chance, they're the 2 franchises that have actually won the 100. We're going to start with the Oval Invincibles, winners in 2021 and 2022.
I mean, the Oval Invincibles were completely dominant in those first 2 years of the 100. Ironically, in both, they were a little bit unstable in those finals, but they pulled through both times, mainly thanks to Marizanne Kapp, who is there again this year. They struggled last year based on their standards. They came 5th, and they had quite a lot of movement in that draft, a lot of which many would argue didn't really make much sense based on the success they'd had with their squad, but they seem to have brought together a very talented bunch of players. Overseas-wise, you've got Chamari Atapatu, who is, in my opinion, one of the greatest players in women's cricket right now. She is on fire. Sri Lankan captain, probably not a player who previously was given the appreciation she deserves based on the fact that she doesn't play for Australia, New Zealand or India. And they've also got Marizanne Kapp, as previously said, and Amanda Jade Wellington, the top wicket taker in the 100, who they've taken from Manchester Originals. It's a very talented squad. Even having Laura Harris coming in for the first couple of games whilst Chamari Atapatu's off on international duty, I'm very disappointed she hasn't got a contract for the whole tournament. She is one of the biggest six hitters in the women's game. But it's an incredible squad. They've got a balance of experience. Lauren Winfield-Hill as their new captain, and young players with Alice Capsey, Sophia Smale, Brianna McDonald-Gay. They might be up there again this year.
Finally, the Southern Brave, winners at last in 2023 because they were beaten in the final in 2022 and 2021. A big England contingent, another strong side.
It was inevitable they were going to win last year. Charlotte Edwards is a very proven leader. There are crazy stats surrounding the teams that she's coached and their ability to reach finals. She won the triple last year in English cricket. She won the Rachel Hayflint Trophy and the Charlotte Edwards Cup with Southern Vipers and the 100 with the Southern Brave. And I think something she does so well is she discovers talent. She relies on young players as well as her core England players. They've got Smriti Mandela back, very key for them. Indian opening batter, her and Danny Wyatt, their opening partnerships prove lethal for the Southern Brave. You've also got your Lauren Bowles, your Maya Bouchiers, your Freya Kemps. It's the England talent just goes on and on and on. But then the thing which steals it for me is you've got regional talent and really good regional talent. Georgia Adams is taking over the captaincy from Anya Shrubsole this year, who retired following the tournament last year and following their victory. She captains the Southern Vipers and has proven time and time again why she is such a good leader. Tilly Courtine-Coleman, 16 years old. Charlotte Edwards actually drafted her before she had made her senior cricket debut. She plays her cricket at the South East Stars. She is a talent. And you've got your very young players like Mary Taylor as well. They're going to be up there again. It's inevitable that they are going to be up there again. It's just whether the other teams can overcome their batting lineup for me.
Talking about their batting lineups, Smriti Mandana's had a fabulous run of late.
She has. She is a class player. She has been at Southern Brave for years now. And she's also very good from a leadership perspective. I think for Georgia Adams to have her as a senior international talent, as well as probably also your Danny Wyatt and your Chloe Tryons, but Smriti especially, it could make or break their tournament. Her having a good tournament could be the difference between them winning and not winning. It's a bit of a struggle for them that Smriti is playing in the Asia Cup for India. I'm lying. Charlie Knott will be coming in for the first couple of games, another very talented player. But it's about whether Smriti can come in and immediately hit the ground running or not.
You mentioned Georgia Adams, the new captain. She was also the leading wicket taker in the 100 last season.
She was indeed. She's very talented. She's one who many would argue has been snubbed by England. I'd probably agree. But she is a domestic cricket powerhouse. She has proven time and time again why she is one of the best. And I don't see why she won't do exactly the same thing again for Southern Brave this year. It will be interesting how selection is handled, because obviously she'll play quite a key role in that. Because they've got everyone in that 11 has a right to play, has a right to be in that team. Everyone in that squad, sorry. Also an important one to mention, Brianna Southby, wicket-keeper, had quite the tournament last year, who will definitely have a place in Adams' 11, but it's an incredible squad. It's a varied squad, and you can see them doing well once more.
Well, thank you very much for your reviews of all the 8 teams. You've obviously been hard at work on holiday, not doing much sunbathing. So we're going to come back to your top 3 and winners and standout players. But I just wanted to move tack a little bit to talk about the future of the 100. And earlier this week, I spoke to Mick Newell about the future of the 100. And let's hear what Mick had to say. What are your thoughts on the proposed franchise sales? Knots are going to get 51% and 49% is going to be sold by the ECB.
Yeah, look, it's an ongoing process. We're not really over all the detail as of yet, and I think that it will hopefully bring in an influx of cash, as I said earlier, that will allow the game to survive as it's been going for 200 years, because as I say, we play an awful lot of cricket that nobody or very few people watch. So if we want to maintain all forms of the game, the 100 is vitally important to raise money for us to continue to do that. So I think that'll take a few more months. We're kind of getting to know some detail, getting to know the process. But the ECB have got a product that people want, then we need to take advantage of that.
Is that the right move? You're confident that investment is the way forward? Because competition from competitions like the MLC, we might start to lose some of the world-class players.
Well, we're already seeing a little bit of that. We've got MLCs finishing after the 100 starts this year. So there will be some overseas players not here for the start of the 100 because the MLC is quite an attractive competition in terms of the money that's paying, and the lifestyle that you can have if you go to America for 4 or 5 weeks. So, yeah, look, there's a growth of these tournaments around the world. We want our the best players to play in the 100. We've got Rashid Khan playing here again, who would be one of the top 5 cricketers in the world in terms of short form cricket. There's no doubt about that. So if we're going to want to attract them, we're going to have to pay good money. People like coming to this country because they like the fact that the tournament's well organised, they're guaranteed to get paid, they're well looked after. There's lots of plus points around playing cricket in England. And I think we need to maximise the 100 for the benefit of the whole game.
But you're confident the 100 is here for the future and the county game can continue in a similar format to as it is today?
I think the two things will need to work together. Yeah, I think the 100 can support the county game. The finances that the 100 brings can continue to support the county game. I think without the 100, the county game, it's a different world for it. And I think at the moment we're in a pretty good place where the 100 is, as I say, if it's attractive to people and they want to invest in it, then bring them on, if it's what I say.
But reflections after 3 years of the 100, in your opinion, positive?
Well, I've said to you before, I think I don't see how a full Trent Bridge can be a negative thing. I don't see that. Most of the time the grounds are 80% plus from what I've seen capacity. So I don't see how that can be a bad thing, people watching cricket. And if they follow up onto other formats of the game, then great. If they don't, if the 100 is what the format that they enjoy and they're prepared to come and watch for a month a year, then that's great as well. I don't think we should be shutting our doors. And as I say, cricket's quite unique, isn't it, in all the different formats and the different lengths of game that we have. So we should embrace them all.
There's lots going on at the moment with the franchise sales in the background, Rosa. What do you think to what Mick had to say?
I completely agree with him. I think, obviously, we don't know what form that's going to take yet, and that's really important. But the really positive side of that is the money which it will inject into county cricket. I think the 100... Cricket is fragile. Apart from the short format, it is fragile. We're in a point where people would argue it's scheduling, but even when the County Championship games are in a good place, they're not as full as they probably should be. Cricket needs something in this country in order to inject cash and survive, and it makes sense for that thing to be the 100. Obviously, it's a balance. You can't get to the point where the 100 is a dominant force because it's significantly smaller than the county game as a whole, and without the county game, the 100 also wouldn't survive. But I don't see why everything can't work together. And as he said, why is people getting into the grounds and the grounds filling up? How is that a bad thing?
Interesting to hear what you had to say there. Cricket clearly needs finances. The county game, in my opinion, is very important. But without the finances, county cricket, as it stands at the moment, can't survive long term. My only worry is if the people that then become the owners of the franchises, the Trent Rockets and the Birmingham Phoenix, that the tournament gets bigger. I like the fact that the tournament is relatively short over 3-4 weeks, and it grabs your attention. There's not too many teams. That's my only fear, is that you don't want, like you've just said, the competition dominating the whole summer where there's 14 teams, as an example, and it's taking 2 months of the summer.
I mean, we can look at the IPL as probably an example of what we don't want to be, in terms of it is too long, to the point that people lose interest in it. And apart from anything else, a franchise cricket environment is a really difficult one for the players within it. It's packed, it's busy, it's different, and a lot of them are away from home. It's very important for their sakes when we talk a lot about scheduling and the fact they're playing too much cricket, that we don't let it grow to a ridiculous extent. And that's something which probably is one of the leading concerns when it comes to these sales, and something which I think the ECB probably haven't thought through to the extent they claim they have, or they think they should. But we don't know what's happened until it's happened. And we can hope that the other factors limit the control which these people who are injecting all this cash hold over the English game. Now then, we've spoken a lot about the women's side of things, but what are you thinking when it comes to the men's tournament?
Oh, you put me on the spot there. I haven't done the research. I haven't been on holiday to Portugal to do the research, but I did sneakily look at the men's teams, and obviously I do follow the men's competition as well. Last year won by the Oval Invincibles. They beat the Manchester Originals, who had been in the final for the last 2 seasons, and Sultan Butler being the sort of key players for the Manchester Originals. Yeah, what teams do I think? The 3 teams that I've looked and picked out that I think will do well are the Southern Brave. They've got Jofra Archer playing. That should be interesting to see how he gets on. They've also got Chris Jordan, James Vince, Kieran Pollard, and Akil Hussain, the West Indian slow left armour. He often opened the bowling for the West Indies in the recent men's T20 World Cup. I think he could go well in the competition. My other 2 teams that I think will do well are the Oval Invincibles. They've got the Currans, Will Jacks, Gus Atkinson when he's back from international duty, and they've got a couple of impressive Australians in Spencer Johnson and Adam Zampa. And the other team, I think, is the Trent Rockets. I think they could do well. Rashid Khan is back at some point from the MLC, and they've got Rovman Powell, the West Indian captain, playing for them. So they're the 3 teams that I think stand out in the men's competition.
You mentioned there the overseas talent. I think, how crucial do you think that is on the men's side of things? Kirstie, as an example, said that in the women's side of things, the squads tend to be shaped around the overseas players. How do you feel that balances with the men's game?
Good question. You put me on the spot there. I'm not used to asking questions, am I? I'm using the person that's asking other people questions. I don't think it's quite as significant because you've got lots of international players. Well, hopefully a lot of the England players will be playing in the competition as well. But like in any 100 game, one player can almost win a match, can't they? I mean, for the Southern Brave, they've got Finn Allen, who opens the batting from New Zealand. Well, every ball counts when Finn Allen. He could be out first ball, or he could have 50 in the power play. Yeah. I don't think it's probably as significant in the men's 100. It will be very interesting to see how Jofra gets on, because if he's fit, which he appears to be, and bowled well in the men's T20 World Cup, he could have a big impact in the competition, I think.
100%. I think, as you said, that Southern Brave pace bowling duo of Chris Jordan and Jofra Archer is a tad terrifying. I've seen them play a few times, and it was terrifying without Jofra Archer. So throwing him into the mix as one of the most young and exciting pace bowlers could put them up there again.
But even teams that you don't think are necessarily as balanced as other teams, the Manchester Originals, for instance, they've got Phil Salt and Josh Butler. If they both had exceptional tournaments, Butler was the leading run scorer in last year's tournament, they could still go very well. They've been in the final the last 2 seasons.
I think probably one of the biggest differences between the men's and the women's game is in the women's game, you can't, if one player does well, you've probably not won the game. But in the men's game, if you've got one batter who's had an exceptional innings or hasn't had an exceptional spell with the ball, that team is probably going to end up on top.
So I'm going for the Southern Brave to win the men's tournament, with my second and third teams being Trent Rockets and the Oval Invincibles. Before we go on to your women's predictions for the 2024 100 competition, how are the Birmingham Phoenix going to do in the men's competition? Your local team.
Oh, you put me on the spot there. Hopefully better than last year. They have a very talented squad, from what I recall. Let me have a cheeky look to remind myself.
Because you will be there at Edgbaston following some of these games, won't you? You've got Tim Southey, Adam Milne, so it's a New Zealand flavour in the overseas.
As a Warwickshire local, there's some very talented Warwickshire talent, which is always good to see. Dan Mosley, Jacob Bethel, and obviously local legend Chris Wokes. It's a great side and one which has the potential to do very well. I think, as you said, that overseas contingent is probably quite significant in terms of how they do, more so than probably in other teams. I think the only issue they are probably faced with is the balance of the side. I think you're probably going to end up having a longer tail than you want in a franchise tournament, especially in the men's side of things. But we will see how things end up. I can't see them doing any worse than they did last year, to be honest. So
yeah, it wasn't a good year last year for the Birmingham Phoenix. Perhaps it'll be better this year in 2024. Let's get back then to your predictions. First question, I'm going to ask you a straightforward question. The highest score in the 100 in the women's competition has been 181 by the Welsh Fire. I think that was the game when Tammy Beaumont got her century. Will that be beaten in 2024?
I think yes. I'm going to give Cricket Her a slight shout out here. Rafford Sid, they graph out all of the different total averages, etc. each season, and you see it going up quite significantly season by season in the regional game, and it also has done in the 100. I think obviously if you're going to have a higher total than 181 in 100 balls, you're going to need someone to have a Tammy Beaumont-like innings, but I don't think that's impossible when you've got your Hayley Matthews, your Tammy Beaumonts, your Meg Lannings. I think it will be beaten. I think the talent in the women's game is increasing, but also on the flip side of that, the bowling is also improving. So it's a bit of a balance as to will the bowlers allow a total that big? But when you look at it as a whole, probably yes, that will be beaten.
Top run scorer.
This one really got me. I think obviously you have to give some shouts outs to Chamari Atapatu and Smriti Mandana, but the quite crucial part is they're not there for the whole tournament, so if they end up being the top run scorer, that's quite impressive. I think there's two I think it will be between. Catherine Bryce. I mean, said earlier what an incredible domestic season she's had. And then the other one is a bit of a curveball, but in other ways not. Harley Armitage of the Northern Superchargers. She's Northern Diamonds captain. She hasn't had an incredible season on her standards, but she has the potential to be crucial for that side with the bat, and I think she will go very well.
Top wicket taker?
That one was more easy. I'm going to back Amanda Jade Wellington this year. I think she is an incredible player. I'm quite confused about the fact she seems to move around every year because I don't know why you let her go. But new home with the Oval Invincibles, she will become their core spinner likely. So she is definitely up there for me.
And our final question before I ask you for the top three and the winner of the Women's 100 is a player we should look out for.
You've mentioned her previously, Tilly Courtine-Coleman, 16 years old at the Southern Brave. She recently took 4 wickets in 4 balls versus the Northern Diamonds in the Charlotte Edwards Cup, ending with figures of 5 for 19. She took 16 wickets in total in the Charlotte Edwards Cup. She only made a senior debut this year. Very fresh new talent, but it's very unique in the way she bowls, and it's something a lot of these veterans of the game will not have faced before. So it'll be very interesting to see how she goes. It depends, though, how she is backed by Charlotte Edwards. I think Edwards signing her in that draft is a very positive thing, because she could have waited until the wildcard stuff, but she backed her enough to give her one of the higher salary bands. But if she is given game time and given opportunities to bowl by Georgia Adams, she could prove crucial between a good and a bad season at Southern Brave.
A future England player.
100%. I mean, to come into the women's regional game with there's a lot of talent now around, against the Northern Diamonds, who have won things historically, have the likes of Laura Munfield Hill, Holly Armitage, and to just casually take a fifer. That it's outrageous. She has so much potential, and it's about using the hundreds to nurse that potential.
Probably someone who only 3 years ago was watching the 100 on television.
Yeah, 100%. And that kind of owes to the whole, you can be it if you can see it. And she has watched the women's game grow significantly over the past few years. And she's watched it go from people barely scraping by to it becoming a viable career path, So I'm very excited for her, and I'm sure she will go very well.
Well, thank you for all your predictions. We come down now to the final ones. If you could give me your top 3 teams in the women's 100 and the winner.
Okay, I'm going to go. Okay, my top 3. I've gone for a bit of a curveball at number 3, but Meg Lanning is really tipping it for me. London Spirit. I'm really backing them to have a very good year. I think it's going to be very close between them and the Oval Invincibles, between who gets into that eliminator spot. We will see. Obviously, the Southern Brave have to be up there. They've been in the final every year of the tournament, winning once, losing against the Northern Superchargers, losing the other 2 to the Oval Invincibles. Charlotte Edwards, notorious for winning with her franchise sides. You can't really see a world where they don't rank in the top 3. And my champion, and I'm doing it again, Welsh Fire. And this year, they're going to have such a good group stage that they're not going to need an eliminator, which means that they won't have the possibility of getting rained out of the tournament. I think their squad is incredible. They've probably got one of the strongest squads in the tournament. They've retained a lot of the talent which enabled them to get as far as they did last year. They've got a lot of experience in Tammy Beaumont, as an example, as their captain. Someone who stereotypically probably hasn't captained much in her career, but they've backed her. She's gone from being the captain of the side, which only won 1 game in 2022, to leading them to an eliminator in 2023. So I genuinely think she can lead them to one step further, go all the way and win it.
That's definitely a clip at some point on my Twitter or X feed, that you're again predicting the winners of the 100 to be the Welsh Fire.
Indeed, once again. And the rain better not let me down this time.
Well, thank you very much, Rosa, for returning to the paddock and the pavilion following your previous appearance on episode 264. We're going to catch up again after the tournament. I hope I catch up with you during the tournament, when you will be busily working with your ECB accreditation. The action starts on the 23rd of July and the final is on the 18th of August. Thank you very much again for being on the show.
Thank you very much for having me back on. It's been great to talk all things the 100 and the game as a whole with you.
I think after going through the tournament with you, I'm going to give you a pass mark for your holiday revision.
I've done a lot of writing over the past couple of days.
So there's no one who knows more about the women's 100 than Rosa Simkin.
I know too much about the women's 100 right now. It's eating me alive, but it's good. It's good. I should be at the game on Tuesday, so that'll be good as well.
You're going to the first game?
I mean, I'm on work experience with Wisdom for the week, who are based at the Oval. So they want to have me at that game on Tuesday. I mean, they've turned one of the executive boxes into an office for them. So I'll be watching it either way because I'll be able to see it. But we'll definitely be there in some shape or form.
Well, good luck on Tuesday. Send me some photos, and thank you again for being on the show.
I will do. Thank you.
Sports Social Podcast Network.